Tippy-tappy in the box, long throws in the dark arts. The podcast has the tactics board out and they think it's all over. It is now. The SPFL season, that is. The playoffs have come and gone and St Mirren stay up. And how will Lawrence Shankland fare at Ibrox? Hello, I'm David Currie and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Tuesday the 26th of May. And today, folks, we're making sense of the Scottish Football Tactics Board. When I say we, I mean our guests. Tactics, not really my strong point. From the low block to the high press, we'll guide you through who did what and why. And here endeth the Premiership season.
It's decent, off the bar, and in! It's gone in! And St Mirren have the goal! Marcus Fraser in the back post!
Aye, the domestic season is over and the summer transfer mayhem is only just beginning. And as Lawrence Shankland finalises a move to Rangers, what does that mean for the Ibrox club and also for Hearts?
Chance Shankland! Lawrence Shankland, left foot, low, drive into the bottom left corner!
We've got Scottish football covered this morning.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
So the sun is shining, the birds are singing, and our guests are in position. They are Kris Doolan, Partick Thistle legend, now on the coaching staff at Kilmarnock, and John Walker, coach and analyst. He has his whiteboard and wee magnetic counters at the ready for our tactics talk. And let's start, folks. We'll get to the Premiership playoff later, Kris, when I've kind of got you round to my side, but never mind. We'll start with getting the Wilfred Nancy's wee magnetic board back out. John, this is something you spend hours and hours over, tactics. Let's talk about the past season and the tactics. Was it a break with the past tactics-wise in the Premiership? What were the big, grand, sweeping themes of the season that's just ended?
I think one of the things in Scottish football this season is that there's been a lot more push towards probably what you would call modern football. I think with the way John McGlynn's Falkirk, Motherwell obviously played, Kilmarnock near the end of the season, you can see teams actually where you're starting to really see UEFA-type coaching hitting our game and a little bit less of, I don't want to call it just second ball football because teams are very good at that and teams are very well coached at that. But even if you go down the divisions as well, you see influences hitting it there. You see East Kilbride playing a very specific style of football that works for them and they get players. It just, I think it makes recruitment easier. If you have a very specific style of play, it makes it easier for you to go identify the types of players you need to come into that club.
Kris, have you noticed all these changes? I'm sure you have. It sounds like John's been out and about across Scotland watching all these things. You from your position you're in just now, have you noticed all these big changes? Are we is there a change in the culture?
Yeah, I think there has been, and I think Motherwell probably typify that. I do agree. I think across certainly the Premier League, there's a number of teams now doing it, but also it's not just the Premier League, and it's about adapting those principles. Not everybody can play like Man City. Not everybody, because you don't have the players to do it. What you can do is adapt the principles of it and then adapt it to the level of player that you're working with. But John's right, then it helps recruitment, because if you've got a style of play that you don't have to stick to it rigidly. And I think Jens has been a prime example. It's so hard to go and press because they can then clip it over your head. If you sit off, they'll play out. So all of a sudden, you're caught in between. And I think the kind of Motherwell team this year typifies exactly why teams want to play out for the back, and because they'll create chances and they will score goals, and inevitably most of those teams end up higher up the divisions.
So Motherwell, by the sounds, I mean that's really, to be honest, guys, that's about the only one I've noticed changing their tactics in a revolutionary sense. But it's just like the tip of the iceberg, John. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but I mean, Kris is hitting the nail on the head there. I think everyone forgets when people like me talk about the way teams play that we want it to be 50 passes every time before you can score a goal. That's absolutely not the case. One of my favourite teams to watch was Liverpool's Klopp, and if you go watch them, the amount of times Van Dijk would have a ball and it'd be clipped straight over the top to Salah and it'd be a goal. That's the kind of variety you need, and that's what's good. My boring part and the bit I don't like about football is when everyone takes a long goal kick and pushes everyone into one little area of the pitch and launches it into there, and they just fight off scraps, where I'm going like, you could go short the first one and then go long right after it. So it's not, I don't want 50 passes for each team and each team setting off and waiting for each team to press them in a certain area. But I would like teams to like at least put the ball down and do what they do, because these players, for the most part, are in 5 days a week. And one of the things I was stunned with, because I had grown up watching a specific type of football, I would go watch League 2, League 1, and the training levels were ridiculous. The technical levels of players, I was blown away. Because I would go watch the games on a Saturday and just see teams that looked like they were fighting each other. And then I'd watch them in training, and I thought the technical levels of Scottish footballers was unbelievable through the whole leagues.
So what happened then? What happened on a Saturday?
I guess just a bit of fear, a bit of like everyone's fighting for jobs, everyone's fighting for their mortgages. It's too risky for them. I guess that's probably part of it, and I think that's what Jens has kind of addressed a lot with Motherwell. He's talking about psychological safety, players wanting to do what they feel safe doing. They don't want to take risks. They want to almost getting out their day job without being slaughtered or abused, where he's kind of went, yeah, but you could come here and do well and be lauded and be praised and be loved by the whole... I mean, Motherwell have been pretty much loved by the whole country, barring a few teams.
Aye, but I mean, Kris, he stuck to his guns, didn't he? Because, you know, in the early days, we saw them playing it out for the back, getting caught a few times and being punished, but they persisted. And obviously the players bought wholesale right into it.
And I think, you know, if that's the way you want to play, you have to accept that you'll lose some goals. And I think any manager, if you speak to any manager who does want to play out for the back, who does insist that the team play that way, will also take the responsibility of, you know, you'll lose some silly goals at times, and some goals that will be easily avoidable, because people will comment that, you know, why did you play a ball 2 or 3 yards for your goal line, whatever it may be, and you lose goals. But across a season, across, you know, however many games, teams are now playing 50 odd games a season, across these amount of games, I think data also backs up the fact that these are the types of teams who score more goals because they create more space further up the pitch. And I think Motherwell, for instance, I think they've been brilliant at it. Yes, they've lost a few goals. We've all, you know, everybody's probably said they're avoidable, but they've also scored some amazing goals that everybody will be talking about for years. So I think there's that balance, and the manager will take responsibility for that, which I think Jens and John mentioned, you know, John McGlynn's team's been doing this for years. This is no new for John McGlynn. I played against these sides, and they are so well drilled, so fluid in their movement and the way they play, but they're deadly. When they come forward, they're deadly, and it's hard to stop.
See what?
And I think James is just taking that another level now.
See what John was saying there, Kris, that, you know, the technical level's actually higher than maybe we give across the sweep of Scottish football's higher than we give it credit for. But when it comes to a Saturday, that pressure to get the result kind of overtakes everything else. Is that something you can bear witness to?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, managers are under so much pressure so quickly that, you know, you look at the leagues aren't that big, so the minute a manager loses 2 or 3 games, they start to think, you know, you could be out the door soon. So one, you won't see as many young players then blooded through and into the team, because managers might lose their jobs. So there's a fear. There's also a fear if they're, you know, playing out for the back and they start losing 1, 2, 3 silly goals. But I think, like I said, I think the bigger personalities, the guys who really believe in what they're doing longer term and are given that time and that backing. And I would go back to the likes of John McGlynn, the backing that he's had for the years that he's been given. Jens as well, you know, like I said, I know he's been there for a season, but he's been a revelation. But he was given that backing, and just because he lost a game or two doesn't mean every day, you know, they want to chuck that style of play. It's about, you know, doubling down on it at times, and giving managers and players the time to get used to it. But, you know, like I said, John McGlynn's, it's not new for John. He's been doing it for years, and that's why I think his teams rocketed up the divisions, because they were so well drilled, but also so good at what they do. And now they're holding their own in the Premier League as well.
So what's your coaching philosophy at Kilmarnock with the young players there, Kris? I mean,
I think with the younger ones, we make them good decision makers. You can't play out for the back if you've not got enough numbers to play out, if you don't have the right people around you. It's about them making good decisions. And I think that's the key to being a good footballer. You're given all the information, you're given when to play out, when to play long, when to hit switches of play, whatever it may be. But then when you go on the pitch, the manager can't do it for you. The coaches can't do it for you. So ultimately, it's about players making the right decisions at the right times. And for me, it's about making good decision makers from a young age, and that should carry them all the way through their career.
So does that mean when it comes to a game and you're in the technical area, you just kind of stand back and let the players make their own decisions in that game context?
Well, they will have to make their own decisions. Like I said, once they go on the pitch, I've been that player. The manager can't come on and fix it for you. They'll take responsibility and they'll try and take the pressure off the players and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, the decision making will come from whoever's on the ball or whoever's on the pitch, and that'll be the players. So the manager and the coach's job is to, during the week, make sure they get the right information into those players, let them see the pictures that they're going to see maybe in the game and recreate that as much as possible. And hopefully then on a Saturday, with the pressure of the game, as we go back to that, as soon as you put opposition in there, it's different. As soon as you put a crowd in there, it's different. Referees, it's different. So all of a sudden, there's different pressures. And sometimes that affects your decision making as well.
So what were the other themes, John, that you noticed this season then, in terms of maybe this isn't pertaining to Scottish football, but the Arsenalisation of football with the concentration on set pieces?
Well, I think we've seen it with Hearts and Rangers. Like, there's no coincidence. The two teams, although every team will have a designated set piece, it's normally the goalkeeping coach that will do a lot of the set pieces, or a youth coach that will do a lot of the set pieces. Rangers and Hearts have a dedicated specialist set piece coach, and they were the best two at set pieces in the league. So that's not a coincidence that if you put more effort and put more time into your set plays, you're going to tend to get more output. So I think there is like a bit of a rise to the Arsenalisation, we'll call it, in Scottish football as well, because they've seen the recruitment shouldn't be restricted to your players. I think Chelsea paid Brentford 3.5 million for their set piece coach.
Wow. Aye, but there you go. But you've highlighted it there then. I mean, there's no many teams in Scotland that can afford to have a dedicated set piece coach, is there?
But the point I was kind of getting to was, if Rangers and Hearts were to have a dedicated set-piece coach and probably have most of the ball in the games they're going to have and the league they're going to have and dominate and then impress, you could very easily attract a Premier League club to come for your coaching staff because the results and because of the likes of Scott Fry. You could have that become a very easy recruitment drive for you, because as Rangers and Celtic, you're going to have loads of corners. If you've got a dedicated set piece, you're going to see the rise in set plays. You're going to see that influence the game. So I think set pieces and the number of set pieces that have been scored and the time taken to take them is definitely risen in the Rangers and Hearts games.
Does that excite you, Kris, the thought of a greater concentration on individual coaches? I know Liverpool used to have I don't know if they still have it, but they had a throw-in coach, didn't they, at one point?
I do think it's the way football's going to go. I think there's more and more analysts involved now, and it becomes more analytical, where I think set plays for me are becoming more of an analyst's type of job, because it's becoming such a specialist part of the game. And you're right, you've got a throw-in coach, you've got a set-piece coach, whatever it may be. That's their job, is to focus solely on that part of the game all week. And I think, but across a season, set plays are massive, and they, both in both boxes, in terms of scoring goals, but also keeping goals out. And that's where I think that sort of data comes in. I think more the analysts, stand here as opposed to stand there, and we've got a greater chance of stopping, the opposition scoring. I think that's the level that likes of Arsenal, the top teams, that's the level they're starting to operate at, where it becomes a lot more analytical, and a lot of them, the set play coaches, not only do all the data around it, they can go out in the training ground now as well and be involved. And some of the managers integrate them into the actual coaching session, because they know now that it is to the nth degree that it's been analysed, and they want that small advantage. So any advantage any team can get, they're going to try and take.
We have to bring this one up, John. You'll like this. You maybe already know about it, but before we came on air, the producer was talking to Kris about his moves to counter the threat of a long throw when he was at Partick Thistle. And a certain Mr. Lewis Strapp. Kris, could you just elaborate a wee bit on that situation?
Yeah, well, we knew Strappy had a long throw. I actually played with Strappy for a wee while. I knew he had a really long throw. And we coming into the game, it was a big game. We moved we had the advertising board slightly moved an inch or two, let's say, closer to the pitch to try and stop his runoff, just to try and stop how far he could actually step off the pitch and then step back on. And it's something I'd seen done previously. We'd had it done years ago, and we just thought it was a great, trick to try. But I mean, it's literally, again, small margins that we tried. But unfortunately, there was a gap in the boards at one point, and he managed to run right in between there where the tunnel is at Firhill and launch one into the box. So it doesn't always work. So
can you put advertising hoardings, John, on a tactics board?
I don't think you can, but a team did that exact thing to Arsenal this season with the advertising boards at the corner, and it changed. Apparently Arsenal then started doing corners off of a 3-step run in case teams tried to do it again. So teams will try and counteract anything you've got going for you, and you're good at.
So there you go. Kris Doolan was the first. He was the pioneer. Let's try and project forward then, chaps, to next season. What are you anticipating in terms of tactics, and who do you think might be the disruptors next season in the Premiership?
I think Falkirk will go from strength to strength, if I'm honest. I think John McGlynn's shown year after year he'll recruit good young players, but he's also got a real style of play that, if you walked by and just saw for 10 minutes, you would recognise a John McGlynn side. And I think that's what a lot of managers want. They want that identity. It's not always about, the word philosophy gets written about. I think that's when people stick to it rigidly. I think it's more about an identity. And I think John McGlynn's side have an identity. Yes, they might lose a Calvin Miller or, some of the other Barnley Stewart, the top players. But I would back somebody like John McGlynn to go and recruit another couple just as good, at a good age, and keep them playing in that exciting style of play as well.
John?
I think if St Johnstone hold on to Simo Valakari, I'd expect them to come up and not quite hit the heights of Motherwell. I think if they'd kept McPake, they might have had a chance to step up because they're going to need to try and replace him. But I think they've still got the style of playing ability to come up and do what Falkirk did this year. But then you're going, where does it slip though? Because I think watching a couple of St Mirren games at the end of the season under Craig McLeish, that was some of the better football I'd seen them play. Kilmarnock have probably been the best side in the last 12 weeks. If Kilmarnock, when Rangers beat them 5-1 at Ibrox, down to 10 men, I would have said for 65 minutes, Kilmarnock were the side that were popping the ball about better. And I think that's why, if people remember, there was boos at half time because Rangers couldn't believe they were kind of getting played off by 10 men. I think Motherwell fans will have an expectation that they go and recruit a manager that continues on the work that's been done, but they're going to be ravaged. There's no way they keep half their squad. I think Longello, Watt, Just, Masmanise all go, and then Slattery's went. So it'll be interesting to see Motherwell's appointment and where they go. There's no way Celtic will be as weak as they were this year. Hearts will be stronger. Rangers will need to be stronger. I think the league could be... Again, if we go back to boring conversation, I'm disappointed the league's still not been extended, because I think if Partick Thistle had come up this year, if Dunfermline had come up this year, if St John, you would have had a real good blend of different teams and really good different styles and coaches. So it'll be interesting. I think the league's getting better. I think what we've seen from the low points totals from Rangers, Celtic and Hearts isn't a negative. I think it's because the league's so strong. Yeah, and you have to give the other teams credit for that. It's not always because Rangers and Celtic play poorly. It's because how well the opposition have played. And I think you're right. I think there's a number of teams in the Premier League who showed at the end of the last season just what they might be capable of. And, it's been brilliant. I think Neil McCann and Billy Dodds at Kilmarnock, where I see them, have been terrific. Absolutely brilliant. And then you look further up the division, I do think it's an exciting league. But I also think if it was bigger,
it would be even more exciting.
Yeah.
Because and I don't think that's a hard way of talking about it. I just think in general you would see more young players come into squads because the division is bigger and there's less threat of going out the league. But also you get to go and visit different stadiums, you'd see different styles. And I just think opening that league up would be brilliant for Scottish football.
Time for league reconstruction. We'll leave that for another day. Well, that's all, folks, Premiership-wise. Bring on the League Cup group stage, that's what I say. The domestic season is officially over. It ended with the Premiership playoff final in Paisley. Partick Thistle and Craig McLeish's St Mirren already been referenced in our earlier discussion. But last night, the Buddies prevailed over the Jags. Kris, I know a part of your heart is still at Firhill, but it was a narrow win for the Buddies. Marcus Fraser with the only goal of the game. Was that a fair enough outcome, you think, over the piece?
I actually thought Thistle were the better side across the game. And I don't want to say that as if it's the bias side of it. I do think, St Mirren weren't great on the night, especially last night. I thought they looked like they were scared to play, and they looked almost that their decision making, going back to making good decision makers, the decision making started to go because of the type of pressured game. But ultimately, I've been there. You can be the better side and still not come out on top. And it's about results. It's about just getting over the line. A set play again. So we talk about that part of the game. That was the difference last night, and that's why teams are now investing in that coaching side and that analytical side, because it literally can be the difference. And a lot of teams, for instance, in the Premier League, there's not much between a lot of the teams. So if you can get that wee edge where you're winning a set play or scoring off a set play and also defending a set play, that might be the difference that keeps you in the division or sees you drop out the division. And last night, Marcus Fraser obviously gets round the back. He gets a brilliant goal, to be honest. To be fair to St Mirren, it's a brilliant goal. But it's a set play. And any team that loses a goal for a set play won't be very happy. But the guys who score for a set play will be, because it's something they will be working on.
That's interesting what you say there. You thought, St Mirren had maybe playing with a wee bit of fear. And I was at the game and a wee fella walked past me and he had a sweatshirt on and it had the Stephen Robinson's kind of League Cup final slogan, faith over fear. And I was thinking in that moment, I thought, well, the Partick Thistle fans are here. They sold out that away section, and I'm thinking they're full of kind of hope and that faith in St Mirren. It's like, they're playing to try and preserve something rather than be aspirational. So you could almost see that bleeding through.
You can understand it because St Mirren had everything to lose, so they've naturally got a bit of fear. It's how they handle that. Any team that could come out the Premier League, they're the ones with something to lose. The team coming up literally don't have anything to lose. They can go and throw everything at it. Everybody's disappointed, and it'll be a sore one for everybody. But they didn't have anything to lose. They could only gain. So sometimes that's the bit of fear that the team coming up just doesn't have. But like I said, it's about getting results by hook or by crook. You just find a way of winning. And last night, that set play was enough to split the two teams.
Yeah, when you say by hook or by crook, I'm getting an image in my mind of Alex Gogic in there, who again was absolutely inspirational, outstanding, a force of nature, John. And he kind of it was almost as if he can drag St Mirren through tough times sometimes.
I think, to go back to what Kris said right at the start, see having a coaching philosophy or an identity or a style, it's all well and good, but see if you don't have the players to do it. I think if I look back to the first St Mirren Aberdeen game under Craig McLeish, I think I had St Mirren fans tell me it was the best football they'd seen at St Mirren in years for the footballing aspect.
I'll go along with that.
But that wasn't transferable over the next few games. There was a lot of mistakes, and then you've got players who have been drilled to the nth degree to be a Stephen Robinson side for 3.5 years. That doesn't go away overnight. And I think Craig McLeish has then went, I've got a Stephen Robinson team that can't play the way I want to just now. It's too risky. I'll go and just go back to 3-5-2, stick to what Robinson was doing, give the players a bit of safety and comfort and that they know what they're doing. And I think you kind of seen that. I think at times in the Firhill game, St Mirren played some good football, but then in the second half, it was getting launched. There wasn't a pass made to anyone until Aduba that came on later on. Then they got a bit of control late on. I think St Mirren for the first half yesterday, Partick Thistle yesterday, were the better team for the first 60 minutes. And then St Mirren got a bit of the Stephen Robinson about them, quite direct in their half, got set plays and decided to go. And I think if there's a player that defines Stephen Robinson and that character, it's Gogic yesterday.
So that's an interesting point. What happens next then at St Mirren? Is it a break from the past? Do they go with Craig McLeish for next season? Kris, what do you think?
It depends. I think we'll all be debating about that, but it depends in-house what the club want to do. Have they seen enough of Craig and the way he is around the place? Because it's not just necessarily what he does on the pitch. It'll be everything. If he's going to be the manager, how does he interact with other staff? How is he leading in the press? And then so it'll literally, I think, come down to what the board at St Mirren what they want. Do they want a younger manager or do they want an experienced manager? Because it'll depend which way they want to twist or stick. Do they want to see a more exciting style of play that we're talking about? Possibly, but ultimately they've been successful under Stephen Robinson as well. And Stephen's teams maybe don't get the credit that they should, because yes, that they're well drilled, but being well drilled also makes you successful. And there's different ways to be successful. And I just think as a manager, yes, there's a way of playing, and you want to stick to that as much as you can. Those principles don't change, but you have to change and adapt. And it's the way of being a manager. For me at St Mirren, it will literally come down to what way the board want this to go. Do they want to be a clear out and change everything and step away from a previous type of playing? Or do you want to just continue something similar because it's been successful for them over a number of years? That's the decision I think they've got to make.
Hi, John. I was having a wee look through the squad there, and a large swathe of the players will still be there next season. They're losing like Mandron, O'Hara out of contract, but if you like, there's a rump there that stays. So are these players going to have to adapt to a McLeish style if he stays, or do they need more players?
I think if McLeish stays, what you see is a change to recruitment at St Mirren, definitely. I think some of those players will return to England and move to the lower leagues in England if he gets the job. I think because as somebody that's watched a lot of the youth football, Craig McLeish has pretty much imprinted St Mirren have a specific style of play from 13s through to 19s, and they're very good at it. They're very good man-for-man press. They play it from the back. They play good football. It's nice attacking football. They've got some really good youngsters. Josh Farquhar went out to Cumbernauld Colts and was sensational this year. You've seen the boy Young come through. You've seen the boy Faulkner come on. I think they've given 6 academy players debuts in that bottom 6 split. So I think if McLeish was getting the job, you'd see a very quick change to recruitment, and you'd see a lot of youngsters starting to come through from that academy, because Scottish football's got no money. There's no money in Scottish football. So I still think it's something that frustrates me with Rangers. The underutilisation of your youth players is utterly astonishing to me for a country that's got so limited money that we don't see more and more bred in. But I think if McLeish gets it, there'll be a change to recruitment and there'll be more youth players in the team.
Finally, the Shankland show. Lawrence Shankland joining Rangers. Well, at time of recording, it hasn't happened yet, folks. But there seems a whiff of inevitability about it. Kris, Shankland going to Rangers. What are your views on this? I
think he's a brilliant signing for Rangers. I think it's something they've probably been crying out for years. He's the type of player. I think what I start to see now is Rangers at the top are starting to realise that there's good players in Scotland. And you don't have to always go and spend millions of pounds to bring players in when you've got a Lawrence Shankland, for instance, who knows the league, who knows the types of clubs in Scottish football. Sometimes I think, and you think back to the successful Rangers, Kris Boyd, you don't have to go far. Kenny Miller, you don't have to go far for these guys to find them in the country. So sometimes we overlook the top Scottish players, and I do think, it was a sore one for Hearts. I think it's a sore one because he's been outstanding for Hearts. He's been one of those players where every time he plays, they win. He contributes, whether he scores, he assists. His movement's great. I think it's a sore one for Hearts, but in terms of for Rangers, I think he's probably exactly the type of player that they've been crying out for.
John, it's a body blow for Hearts, isn't it? The timing of the leak, shall we say, just after Hearts had missed out on the title, Celtic getting the double sole from a Rangers point of view. It'll give their fans a real lift, but for Hearts, you've got to feel for Hearts fans, haven't you?
Yeah, but I think Hearts will be fine. I know they're losing all those goals, but you've only got to look in Italy and see what Como do with Jamestown with their recruitment side. They'll have the next Lawrence Shankland hopefully readied for them. I don't think Hearts will be a problem. I think it's more the Pro and Rangers. Kris is right. There is an absolute snobbery between Old Firm fans and signing Scottish players. It's unbelievable. I have the same arguments with Conor Barron week in, week out, that I think he's so underappreciated.
But the Old Firm fans not want to see more Scottish players in the team?
Yeah, I think they probably would. I think a lot of them would like to see the Scottish players. I just think sometimes, those players are right in front of your eyes. And in terms of Lawrence Shankland, he's been doing it for years. This isn't just the first year. I think he's been more appreciated this year because of the impact he's had around Hearts. But they could have had him previously. I think there was the discussions about it previously. He could already have been doing this for Hearts, for Rangers, sorry. But now seems to be the time, and at 30 years old, this is probably the time. If he's going to go, he has to go now.
Is that him an automatic starter for Scotland now that he plays for Rangers, John?
I don't think that will be the case. I think Shea Adams has had a pretty good season. I think he'll have a couple of words to say about that.
Final thing, Kris, before we wrap up today's proceedings, does Shankland get the captain's armband at Rangers?
I've got no idea. He's certainly a leader. I would say that. I would say there's a reason why at Hearts he was the leader, and I think when you have those qualities, regardless of what position you play in, if you've got those qualities, you deserve to carry that armband. Whether the manager wants, some managers don't want strikers because they're at the top end of the pitch and they're looking back the pitch as opposed to looking up the pitch and all this type of stuff. But in terms of having leadership, he certainly brings leadership. Whether he wears the armband or not, I think he's a leader coming into Rangers.
Alas, folks, that's all we've got time for today. Many, many thanks to Kris and John, and thanks most of all to you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast, bright, breezy and early every day, so to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. That's it, whatever you're doing, folks, have a great one and we'll talk soon.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.